Inside BBI with John and Eric begins now.
All right, well, welcome back to another edition, a summer edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt. With me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. Eric, it's been extremely hot. It's been hot, but it's quiet time here for Giants fans and stuff. But let's start off with it's the morning. It's a Sunday morning. It's only water, water with a little lemon and a little bit of mint from our own mint plant out back. Oh my God, fresh mint is amazing. Love it.
Yep. And we're getting closer and closer to real football, not this fake World Cup football that we're being subjected to. I'm glad this is almost over. I mean, as somebody who played soccer in high school, it is a boring ass game. I'm sorry. And I know there are people out there that are enjoying this, and most of them are from around the world and increasingly in the United States, but it's not for me. It's not for me. So I wanted the U.S. to win, but as soon as they were knocked out, I'm like, all right, wrap it up. So.
It's funny that you say that because I played soccer as well, and I love playing. It was a lot of fun to play,
but sucks to watch. But that's
yeah, watching. I don't really get the whole like getting really like, oh my God, this is so amazing, and it's like nothing like 90 minutes in, and I'm like, well. At least in hockey, when it's nothing, somebody's been slammed into the board. So I'm like, that's that part of it. Maybe it's just that piece of the physicality part that I really like.
The coolest thing about it are the people coming from here around the world and going, wow, this country is really great. I mean, that's the coolest thing I'm getting out of this right now.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So it is getting closer. It's hard to believe we're borderline halfway through July. Camp opens, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the 29th of July? Is that correct?
Well, the rookies are going to report, I think, on the 23rd, but we won't hear anything about that. That'll be them showing up early. And on the 28th, I believe they report, and the 29th, I believe, is the first practice. I'll have to pull that up. But we're basically 10 days away, 11 days away from the rookies reporting. So it's less than 2 weeks that, and again, you can tell that the teams and people are coming back because the Giants are starting to update things again. And there was another signing, for instance. They got another defensive lineman.
Right.
So you can tell that like everybody's kind of starting to come back from vacation and everything's starting to ramp up a little bit. You're starting to see them starting to put out new content and things like that. So we're getting there. It's like 10 days away. So.
Yeah, I'm still kind of warming up to it. I mean, I'm psyched for it. I mean, it could happen tomorrow and I'd be fine. But I kind of like that we got a little bit more time before we get really into it. It's been so damn hot too. Like it is, and I live in the South now, but it is hot even for the South. So I'm kind of looking forward to just a couple of weeks of like to build up to get there, and then once it goes, because once we get started, there's been a lot of positive for the Giants, right? There's a lot of people that talk very positively. There's still a few that talk some negative, like, nothing's really changed, blah, blah, blah. But the pressure's going to mount. The Harbaugh piece being there, the expectation's going to be there, the eyes are going to be on it. So it's nice to have this little bit of quiet time before we get there, but starting to get that feeling of, it's football time.
Well, it's going to be here quickly. I mean, these 10 days are going to fly. And like I said, they'll start putting out clips of them showing up and then another few days, then the veterans. And again, this year's moving fast. This was a very fast offseason to me. I can't believe we're more than halfway through the year already. So it's going to be quick. It's going to be, what's interesting is this, as I just saw, like other people, I've been starved for like some Giants related content. So I've been watching some YouTube stuff, and most of it's just clickbait stuff. But there was a discussion between Bob Papa and Carl Banks that was older, but just popped up in my feed yesterday. It was them talking about the recently completed last mini camp, the mandatory mini camp. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I took away from, or there were a number of things I took away from that, but one of the big things was Bob Papa and Carl Banks were saying that the players that they talked to said this is the hardest they've ever worked in the spring. And they weren't complaining about it. They say, but again, this is another indication that this is a new sheriff's in town. And it kept coming up. This is the hardest we've ever worked. And I think we're going to see that with training camp, because they did release the schedule and they don't have many days off. And all the beat reporters, all the Giants beat reporters said the same thing almost at the same time. They were like, wow, Brian Dable didn't do it like this. There's no off. And these are long practices, and there's only like 2 or 3 days tops that they're going to have breaks on, not together. Like there's one day here, one day here, or one day here. But other than that, it's practice, practice, practice. So this is a good thing, because now it does up the, there's this argument out there that injuries happen because the more you practice, the more the injuries are going to occur. But then there's the counter argument that older people like me, Carl Banks, have said injuries occur because you don't practice enough and your body isn't accustomed to it. So it's going to be interesting to see, but they're going to work harder. And I think it's far likely that they're going to be ready to play on opening day rather than get blown out 35-0 like we've seen them do. So they're going to be ready, I think, and which is a good thing, because we need to be ready in September, unlike previous years in the last decade where we're not ready to start the season and we're embarrassed on opening day.
Yeah, the weird thing that we want to watch for, but the thing that seems to have happened with the Giants over the last few years is that there's been the injury theme, right? Each year it seems to be a particular type of injury, whether a few years ago it was a calf, and then, it's hamstrings at one point. This year so far, it's the Achilles. And that's the one that, maybe when the Odyssey comes out, that'll just clear up anything left for any kind of Greek references. But I'm hoping the Achilles thing ends with what we've had so far, because it has been a bad trend in this offseason so far, the number of Achilles injuries the Giants have faced.
Yeah, 3. So it's been really odd. So, and other people picked up on it too. I mean, I heard few weeks ago, people were saying, and I think it was an ex-player again. I think it might've been Phil Simms and his son were talking about it, but like they were saying the same thing you and I were talking about. Achilles injuries in general, you only see maybe one of them a year on a team, and to have 3 in non-contact drills in the spring is just weird. They were saying the same thing. So somebody said, I don't remember. It mitight have been Phil. It was one of the older players. They were saying we never saw stuff like this.
They used to be those injuries, particular injuries, that you used to see them more in the mid to late 20s, early 30s guys were a little bit older, right? Then it's the wear and tear eventually just made it kind of weak, and boom. But to see it in younger guys, which we lose right away, and the undrafted free agent corner from Colorado, bam, down here for North Carolina, go boom, he tears his Achilles.
Right.
It's weird. It's weird. It has not been like, it's a couple of Olszewski's been around. You could say, okay, maybe a little bit of an older guy, but it's not really that. It's all across the board. So it's odd. It's odd how the Giants seem to always have one particular type of injury, and it hits multiple players.
And a defensive lineman too. I mean, that's weird too. So, but well, let's look at the positive stuff that's happening.
Let's look at one not positive. It's not negative. Well, it is negative in a way. I'm just going to say this, and it's for everybody in chat and anybody watching, whatever. You're not going to know who I'm talking about, so don't try to guess. It's not any other like New York related Giants content, but it is media related. But if you're a sort of friend of mine, but you haven't had contact with me in, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, don't randomly reach out to me and go, hey, can you give me Mark Collins' contact information? The answer is no. I will not give you Mark Collins' contact information. You haven't talked to me in forever. And so don't just try to use for that. I hate that. I hate that when people do that. So I'm just going to say that if you're just going to be that way, don't ask me for stuff if you don't want to communicate other times. I find it very rude. Like I got a text message out of nowhere, like about 11:30 at night. can I have Mark Collins's contact info? I'm like, oh yeah, hey, we haven't talked since 2018. Sure, let me give that to you. No, the answer is no. So that's that. And then the other thing, real quick, separate of football, because I got asked this question because it was pretty funny. And now Eric's already made fun of it because he could see the pictures below. So I showed this last week, our last show. I'm getting some tattoo work done, right? Whoops, sorry. I meant to put that on there. That's what I showed you last week. That's where I was at. This is the updated version of it. And goddamn, does that hurt? I just want you to know that hurts a lot. But it's covering up a tattoo that's making my wife very happy that it's covered up. That's 7.5 hours of work. And man, I could tell you, honestly, maybe I'm a baby about it, but damn, did that hurt? I've had stuff before. I've again, I had a neck issue that was pretty bad when I had the surgery for it, literally they had me into the emergency room when they did the MRI. They were like, dear God, you got to get this fixed. I've had pain. I've never had that much pain in my life. I was ready to quit multiple times on that thing. And so for those of you who get a lot of tattoos, God bless you. Cause that, I don't know how you do that. It's 7.5 hours so far. I got one more sitting to go to finish it. And then I'm done. But anyway, that being said, I just thought I would answer because I did get a couple of messages asking me about it. So I just wanted to share, but yeah, let's talk football. Let's talk the roster. Paul, it is expensive. It is expensive. Let's talk the roster. Well, let's start with offense. Let's work the, and I know you can say it, but I'll promote for you. Any breakdown by positions, by the way, if you really want to get a more detailed written breakdown, go to BBI, bigblueinteractive.com. Look at the positional breakdowns that Eric's been writing up on each of those. The rest of the roster is still to do, but he's done a number of them already. We're going to highlight stuff. Yeah. It's not going to be as in-depth as his breakdowns on Big Blue Interactive, so make sure you go and check it out.
Yeah, so, and the only thing I'll throw in with there, it's not me self-promoting it from the content, because I put my opinions in there. I'm not trying to say my opinions are any more knowledgeable than anybody else's on this. But what's interesting about doing this as an exercise is I first say what has changed on the position from last year. And sometimes it's a big surprise to me even too when I go back and look at who was at a certain position in September last year. And I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about how much change there's been. So it's really interesting from that standpoint to see how much turnover there's been at each position. And just to sort of remind yourself, like, what was our mindset going into the 2025 season at tight end or at wide receiver? You know, I just did the wide receiver one, and it was like, wow, we were in a really different place at wide receiver than we are now. And the same thing with other positions too. And again, the quarterback position, for instance, at the beginning of the year, we were debating, you know, will we see Jaxson Dart in November or December? You know, we didn't think it would happen that quickly. And we didn't, you know, we thought, you know, Russell Wilson had a pretty good summer, pretty good preseason. And then he flopped in 2 of the first 3 games and he was out of there. And, you know, Brian Dable came out and basically said, we still don't know if this was true or not, but he came out and he said, this is my decision. I'm the one I'm calling the shots on the quarterback switch. And now that's where we are now. And that's one of the big reasons John Harbaugh decided to come to the Giants, is he liked what he saw from Jaxson Dart. But anyways, it's interesting to go back and just see where you are a year ago. And the only other thing in there with these previews is it's very interesting to see what the coaches are saying. So I try to pick select quotes from this offseason that Harbaugh or the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator or the position coach said about the players. And there's some really interesting quotes. So even if you don't want to hear my interpretation of it, just look at the quotes and look at the turnover. It's just interesting. So that's the only thing I'm throwing out there on those.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that, but they are the write-ups are well done, I think. I like the fact that you're not regurgitating somebody else's opinion. That's always been our case, is we don't just repeat what other people say. It's what, you know, and that doesn't even mean you and I don't always agree with each other. As
we do will on Neighbors. We were
I was saving that, but yes, that's exactly true. All right, so let's kick this puppy off. Let's start with the quarterbacks then, if that's okay.
Yeah. And we don't have to spend a lot of time on all this, but I think, you know, the quarterback position is pretty clear. I think you can argue that Jaxson Dart is probably, I mean, I'm going to say he is. He's the most important player on this team right now. And so much of the Giants 2026 season is going to depend on, does he take that next step? How does he respond to a new offensive system, a new coaching staff? How does he respond to that sophomore jinx thing that's out there? And there's a lot of quarterbacks we can go through. We won't go through, but there's a lot of quarterbacks out there that have looked great their first year. Their second year wasn't good at all. And is Jaxson going to be one of those guys, or is he going to take the next step? And then again, how are teams now that they've seen him? They've got, 12 games of him being a starter. They'll now know how to defend him. How is he going to respond to that? So my opinion is they're going to treat him more like Jalen Hurts. They're going to say, we're not going to let you get outside the pocket and improvise. We're going to make you stay in the pocket, and we're going to make you beat us from the pocket. And I got into it with a few people on BBI a few weeks ago who were saying, I don't like what I'm hearing out of the Giants coaching staff about them trying to change Dart, that they're like, making him throw from the pocket more in practice, and they're blowing the play dead. Don't change him. But my argument is they've got to do that because that's how teams are going to start playing him, and he's got to be prepared for that, because if he's not prepared for that, then he is going to flop. So my position is it's not changing him, it's getting him ready for the coming storm. And it's my opinion is if you're going to win a Super Bowl ring, you've got to make plays from the pocket. You can't just be one of these guys that just improvises all the time, because sooner or later you can only do that so many times. You've got to take a team down the field on an 8-play drive and hit the open guy when he's on time with an accurate pass. And it can't just be these, I'm running out of the pocket and improvising plays. But that's my opinion. There are other people out there that are saying, don't take that away from him. I'm not saying take it away from him. I'm saying you got to supplement that. So that's where I'm coming from.
I think some of it, though, is when it's structured, intentional, moving around to have him just run around and do, that's different than when a play breaks down. Right. And I think he's very good at when it breaks down. Now, the one advantage I think that people are kind of ignoring about this, the change isn't just that they're changing what Jaxson does. Remember, this is an entirely different offense.
Yes.
The offensive line is completely different in terms of the physical makeup of the offensive line. The tight end group is essentially completely different with Isaiah Likely's addition and Ricard. If you mix him in with those two pieces, this offense has changed drastically of what it is. So even teams, if you wanted to, if you're only going to just try to plan around what do we do about Jaxson Dart, you might be in for some eye-opening pieces when the Giants open up with 2 tight ends and a fullback and they go run heavy looks. You can't just say, well, we're not going to let him run around, because you might be looking at Cam Skattebo coming behind about 9,000 pounds of offensive linemen coming right at you. There's going to be a lot of stuff that teams are going to have to adjust to. So I think Jackson's piece where they want him to stay in the pocket early might be a little less about, oh, he got away with running around, and more like we're going to be run-centric and run-centric looks. So we want you to get used to the fact that we don't want you kind of running around in the beginning. We want to give teams looks that are going to confuse them on what we're going to do. His ability to do things after it breaks down, I think, is just a natural ability. It's the planning ahead of time of doing those things, which I think was the downfall of Daniel Jones. Bryant Daboll built everything around Daniel Jones being able to fake it to Saquon and then running or running and throwing. But when you couldn't do that, when the offensive line couldn't block, Daniel Jones' entire game broke down completely when he was with the Giants.
Yeah, Daniel Jones was very robotic. So one of the things, and I brought this up before with Jaxson Dart, is the offensive line for the Giants was the best it's been in years last year. However, and I've made this argument before, that Jaxson Dart also made them look better at times, and he also, to be fair, made them look worse at times. But there were times where Daniel Jones would have gotten sacked. But you saw Jaxson sort of step up into the pocket, or even just sort of move left or right, just enough to get away from that, and then sort of reset in the pocket, keep his eyes downfield and throw the ball. Whereas Daniel would have gotten flustered or not even felt the pressure, and he got strip sacked. That was one of the problems especially early in his career. He had a lot of strip. He fumbled a lot. He had, it was almost like 19 fumbles his rookie year or whatever. But Jackson's better than that. My thing with Jaxson if I was going to say the one thing that I'm a little nervous about, again, I'm very positive about him, but the one thing I'm a little bit nervous about is I think it's pretty clear they're going to run the ball with the specific intent to have a lot of play action passing. And I think they're going to cause teams to get into single coverage situations against Neighbors or Mooney or Fields or whoever's out there. And Jackson's going to have an opportunity to make a big play down the field. And the one thing that we've kind of seen with Jaxson that's been sort of hit or miss is his deep throws. We talked about it. There's been times when the ball's hung up there, or he's not been very accurate on a deep throw. So that's the part of his game that, you set that, and you know this, John, because you're an old fan like me. There were times where Phil Simms back in the day, they would set something up and it would be there and it would work. And when it didn't work, you saw Phil Simms being like, damn it. Either Stacey Robinson would drop a pass or he would miss the pass or something like that. But you sometimes spend a whole game to set that up, and you've got to hit that when it's there. And that's the part of this game that I'm hoping they're working on too, is those deep throws. When they're there, he's got to hit those, because those opportunities don't come up a lot. So I think a lot of the big explosive plays we're going to see in the offense are going to come off the play action. And that's new to him. He wasn't a play action quarterback in college. That's where people are going to be like, don't change him into something that he's not. Well, that's going to be something that he hasn't been, and we're going to have to see if he can do it.
And I think one of the good things with the mix that we have in our offensive coaching staff is each of them, from their previous stops, used a heavy amount of tight end usage in the passing game. And Jaxson Dart definitely had some really nice connections with Theo Johnson, with Bellinger. He worked with those guys a number of times.
Right.
And I think using those the bigger tight ends, getting them involved across the middle, especially when teams are caught in no man's land of, are the Giants going to run or are they passing, because of the personnel they have on the field. I think that's really something they can take advantage of even further. And Isaiah likely brings a different skill set to that tight end group than what the Giants have had.
Yeah, when we get to the tight end thing, I have something to give the backup what you're saying, but I looked at the personnel packages as a percentage on the Giants last year versus the Ravens versus the Chiefs because of Nagy coming over.
Yep.
Versus the Titans because of Callahan coming over. And it's kind of interesting. So, and it's going to be in my tight end preview, which drops tomorrow too. So, we're going to run a really different offense here. And I think that's one of the things that we're hearing from the players when they're like, oh, and coaches, they've said this is going to be different. And I think one of it's, and I want to save it to when we talk about the tight ends in a second, but that's all I basically had to say on the quarterbacks. I think when Jameis is going to be the backup, obviously. And then I don't think the third quarterback's going to be on the 53, but that's me. I think they can safely put him on the practice squad. I don't think there's any risk of losing him. So I last year, I went back and looked with the Ravens, and they usually carry two quarterbacks. So I'm guessing they're going to just carry two.
Well, that's the last thing I was going to ask you is because that's my thought as well. There's a lot of roster juggling that the Giants are going to have to do, based on tight end group. How many tight ends do you carry? The fact that you now have a fullback is some, and we're going to get to some of those other positions. So I think two quarterbacks is it too, and I do think they could probably slide the quarterback into the 53 or the practice squad, not on the 53. But even if they don't, even if by some miracle he gets scooped up by another team, there will be another veteran quarterback the Giants can bring in, put him on the practice squad, somebody who somewhat has a similar skill set. I'm not saying it's good, but you want at least somebody who's a little mobile.
Right.
You don't want another statue at quarterback as your third guy, because he can't run a lot of the plays that you're going to have designed for Jaxson. Even Jameis is a pretty big difference between him and Jaxson, but not so significantly different from when the Giants had Dave Brown and then Mike Glennon, which was an absolutely night and day difference of what you could run and what you couldn't run when those happened. So I think we agree it'll be two quarterbacks on the roster.
And I just want to reference this, what Spy Smasher just said. So when Brian Callahan was interviewed before they went on their vacations, he specifically mentioned that they were spending a ton of time with Jaxson on his footwork and his eyes. And again, that's the kind of thing that we're talking about here is if his footwork's cleaner, he will be more accurate thrower. So so that was a good point by Spy Smasher here too.
Nice.
So it's Callahan, and Callahan does have a relationship with the third quarterback, Brandon Allen.
Yes.
And that's again, I think Allen can make it to the practice. No one's going to be claiming Brandon Allen off of waivers. That's me. I don't think that I don't think there's a demand for him out there. So I think they could safely put him out there.
All right, so let's jump to the running back position, which in some ways seems pretty cut and dry, but at the same time there are question marks. So we'll talk about that, and then the fact of like how many, because you got to include Patrick Ricard in this group per se, though you could include him in the tight end group. So let's start with the knowns that we have, which are Skattebo, Singletary, and Tracy. Those are the knowns. I mean, are we thinking there's a chance of anybody else minus injury? Is there really a shot for anybody else to make this group?
I don't think so. First of all, I put Ricard with the tight ends because that's where the Giants have him in the meeting rooms. He doesn't work with the running back coach at all. He's only with the tight end coach. And that came out last week too, or 2 weeks ago when the position coaches were talking. I guess it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. But he's not in the running back room. He's in the tight end room. So that's where I put him too. This is a position that I'm fairly comfortable with as long as Skattebo is okay, and it seems like they think he's going to be okay. I think Tyrone Tracy in a way is sort of the forgotten Giant. There's a couple of Giants here we're going to mention that I think are in that sort of forgotten thing. Again, I'm not saying Tyrone Tracy is a superstar, but I think he's a better player than some fans give him credit for. But we're going to find out a lot about him because I think based on how much they're going to run the football, it can't just be Skattebo. I think they've got to have other guys. In previous years under Daboll and Judge and these other guys that we had, the running backs weren't like featured, like we're going to pound the ball kind of guys. So they could get away with, Saquon was here. They could kind of get away with one guy getting the bulk of the carries. I think really they're going to have to rely on even Devin Singletary to a certain degree more than they have, because I don't think they're going to want to wear these guys down. In the next year, I could actually see them, letting Singletary go. His contract will be up anyways, and them upgrading the position in terms of having another guy that can come in and maybe challenge Tyrone Tracy, depending on how Tracy does. But I could see them. This is one area where if an injury did hit, if we'd lost Skattebo again for the season, this would get a little more dicey than it is. But I think if the three guys are relatively healthy this year, this is a good group. There's a good quote from John Harbaugh in the running backs preview that he really thinks Skattebo is kind of an elite guy. So we'll see. And I'm a big fan of Skattebo. You and I on draft day, we were like a lot of Giants fans, we were like, yes, especially where we got him. And I think he fits this smash mouth team very well. I think him running behind Patrick Ricard is going to be awesome. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to have a gigantic, huge season. And I think Tyrone Tracy is a good compliment to him. And I know there are people out there that are going to be rooting for Dante Miller, even Bankston over Devin Singletary. But I don't think those guys fit the style of offense that this team's going to be a downhill running team. And Singletary, to me, fits that better than Dante Miller does. But again, that's me. I'm not saying Dante Miller doesn't have a path, but I would think Dante Miller's best path, again, is to make the practice squad at this point. So, and Eric Gray's still on the team. Believe it or not, I think Eric Gray fits this style of offense better than Dante Miller if he can somehow revert to his collegiate form. But that's,
I think the Miller thing at this point is kind of play. The each year it's like I think Dante can make this team. He's in preseason. Oh man, he's got a shot at this, and then he doesn't. I think he's one of those guys you keep inviting to camp, and if something really weird happens, he's on the practice squad and you bring him up. The Giants have had him on the practice squad multiple times and have never put him in an actual game. So.
And they never risk losing him either. No one's like knocking on. And Cy said this a couple of years ago. Cy told us when you and I were wondering if he was going to make the 53, and Cy was like, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, he put him on the practice squad. No one's going to claim him, because I looks at all the teams around the league and he evaluates these players. And he said, there's nothing about Dante Miller that's special that other teams are going to be clamoring for him. So
now the Ravens have always had like one back. I think it was is it Mitchell that they had, a young guy? Was he from Toledo? I can't remember.
I'd have to.
They always have like a speed back who's like their third or even fourth back. But I just can't see with the way the roster is going to be. It's going to be the three guys again, unless injury happens. You got to assume it's Skattebo, Tracy, Singletary. They don't need to juggle the roster salary cap wise in terms of those guys. Like they could find money elsewhere if they had to do it. So it's not like, well, we'll let Singletary go and that frees up more money. Yeah. I don't see that happening. The only spot I could see for the other two, not Gray, but the other two backs, is the Giants do have an opening at kick returner to a degree. And that could be their path.
Bankston was good at that too.
And that could be their path to the roster. But if you don't really have a chance to play another position besides returner, I think the Giants are going to lean towards a returner who can also do something at another position.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head, though. I'm glad you brought that up, John, because Bankston's best path is to be kind of that speed back like the Ravens had, but mostly the return game. So, again, they lost Olszewski, and say they want to keep another wide receiver other than Braxton Berrios. This is the spot where they could maybe replace the returner here is somebody like Bankston makes the team. And that's the only scenario too that I see them carrying 4 running backs is that their returner at that point. So I do think there's a path for that guy to be here, but I'm more thinking again with him, his best shot is probably the practice squad at this point. The only other thing I'll throw out in running backs before I'm done is when they asked the running back coach about the room, he was talking about, and there's a quote in the running back preview article. He was talking about how he liked the interchangeability of Skattebo, Tracy, Singletary, because they can all do all 3 things. They can block, they can catch, they can run the ball. He didn't mention anybody else. So I think that shows you that in their minds, these are the 3 guys. I mean,
right.
So a lot of times when you see a position coach talking about somebody and a reporter asks him about his room, they'll say, "Oh, but don't forget about so-and-so." He didn't do that. He didn't say, "Oh, don't forget about, Eric Gray." He didn't say anything like that. So now Eric Gray still is on this roster, but I only think his path is some people like Paul Dottino said he looked sharper in the spring. We'll see, but I wouldn't completely discount him from this angle as if somebody got hurt. So if somebody got hurt, like if Devin Singletary tore his ACL, God forbid, then somebody like Eric Gray would have an opportunity if he looks much better than he has. And because at that point, he's also competing against the waiver wire. If somebody else is out there, the Giants would be looking, in August, if somebody's out there that could pick up the slack if somebody got hurt.
Eric Gray, a lesser Sean Bennett. So, so that's where we're at. Like, don't forget he's still on the team. Yeah. Actually, there were multiple times I did forget he was still on the team. Yeah. So, but I think that's. I don't think we needed to go deep into that. The one fear I think Paul mentioned it a couple times in chat, is an injury does rock that position. I mean, you have those 3 guys, but then you have, as we just said, there's 3 other guys that are going to be in camp. Gray's the only one with any kind of real experience in games and hasn't done much. You've got a rookie undrafted guy, and then you've got another guy who's been with the Giants, consistently, but has not been able to crack the roster. Even when they were fully injured, even when they needed kick returners at one point, the Giants didn't bring Miller up and play him. They brought up other guys. So you kind of know what they think about him. Maybe they just love how he practices well and he shows up, and they're happy with that. And and that sometimes that's all it is. But
and remember, the Giants were supposedly interested in signing the Seattle running back to a big free agent deal, and Jeremiah Love was like, if was on their wish list if it wasn't Arvell Reese. So in their mind, they still see running back as something that they could add to. And you said earlier in a few podcasts ago, you said you wouldn't be surprised if they picked up another running back. So I'm a little surprised there hasn't been one more veteran brought in just as insurance, and we could see that. But like you said, it's okay right now. It just gets a little nerve-wracking if somebody gets hurt. So we'll have to keep our fingers crossed or keep an eye on the position.
And camp opens up a lot because a lot of other teams, as you move along, there are going to be good running backs that get cut. It happens all the time. Yeah. And lots of times there'll be veterans. There'll be a veteran guy, maybe he's been around a little bit, cost them a little too much, and they just don't want to do that. So the Giants could go after a veteran running back if they want to. I think they only do that if somebody gets hurt. I think other than that, I think they're probably now set because there's too many other question marks, which at this point leads us to probably one of the biggest groups of players and the one I think has a lot of question marks, and that's wide receiver.
Yeah, when I wrote this article on the wide receivers, which is the last one I did, the tight end one is coming out tomorrow again, but the last one I did. So I've done quarterbacks, I've done running backs, and I've done wide receivers. There are just so many people in the room right now. And so you could look at it two ways. You could say, and it sounds like Harbaugh's taking the glasses half full. He's basically saying, we've got a lot of great guys here. This is going to work itself out. Whereas you could take the opposite and glass half empty and say, you have a lot of guys because you have a ton of question marks after Neighbors, who's also a huge question mark. So the odd thing is Harbaugh doesn't seem to be concerned about it. I want to throw this up before this kind of previews what I'm going to say about the tight ends. If you look at what the Ravens did last year, they were in two tight end packages probably more than any other team. I have to check all the other teams, but when I was looking at the Giants and the Chiefs and Titans and most of the other teams, it's usually they're in 11 personnel most of the time. That wasn't the case with the Ravens. The Ravens don't do a lot of stuff where it's just one tight end and one running back. They're usually in two tight ends, sometimes two tight ends with a fullback. That was even a common package with them. But they're not in a lot of, as compared with other teams, in a lot of multiple wide receiver, 3 or 4 wide receiver formations. They'll do some of that, but they don't do a lot of that. So One of the things when Harbaugh came out and he said, he seemed to strongly suggest the Giants are only going to carry 6, maybe even only 5. I look at the roster and I'm like, holy hell, who are they going to be the 5 or 6 guys that they keep? And then I was like, well, which of these guys are going to be even the starter? And that started a discussion on the website this week, the last few days, about assuming Neighbors is even healthy, who's the starter opposite of Neighbors? And that's a great question. In terms of the outside receivers, we know who the slot, well, we don't even – John, we don't even really know who the slot receiver is. But someone asked me who's the favorite to be the guy opposite Neighbors. I don't think there is a favorite right now. You can say who the leading candidates are, but that's how crazy the wide receiver room is right now. Is there's talent there. Some of it's older at the end of their career talent, but who's starting and who's playing, who's making the team.
And we're previewing the roster heading into camp for the 26th season. But if you look at it right now, and if you objectively look at the Giants as a whole and going forward, you can see that there's going to be a massive amount of change in 27. There are so many spots where there are players in numbers of players that are really on 1 or even a 2-year contract, but it's really a 1-year deal. The receiving core is absolutely one of the biggest jumbles there is. You've got Neighbors, and we're going to talk about him specifically in just a minute. Darius Slayton, I got to assume, is on his last leg here with the Giants based on the cost of it. He's probably there with the team this year. And with the question marks with Neighbors, he's probably definitely there just from the fact that he does have a little bit of a connection with Dart. I don't think he has the biggest connection, though. Of the wide receiver group, Wan'Dale Robinson would have been the guy that probably had the most connection with Jaxson Dart. He's not there anymore. So now you've got Slayton, and it's a whole new offense. It's not Dayball's offense, and Slayton knows it, and he can explain it to everybody else. Slayton's kind of the odd man out as far as he's been there the longest and knows the least about the offense. So, but I think he's there. That whole group, though, JuJu Smith-Schuster, if he makes the team, doesn't make the team, it's a 1-year thing. Mooney, 1-year deal. I mean, Austin, if he makes the team, 1-year kind of deal.
Right.
Barrios, if he makes the team, 1-year kind of deal.
Right.
So this whole group is really going to change. So for a second, let's set Neighbors aside because I want to come back to him.
Well, let's get him out of the way. Let's get him. You want to get him out of the way?
All right, let's do it. Why don't you go first, and then I'll say.
Well, John and I have a difference of opinion on this, and I'm just going to preface my remarks by saying this: is I think the media has misinterpreted what John Harbaugh said 2 press conferences ago when he said he's going through the slog of this, and then John did correct the record in his last press conference and basically said, I'm not any less optimistic. And he was actually saying, he said very positively, he said, I think he's on track and he's going to be back. What I said 3 shows ago or whatever it was, John, was this, and it hasn't, in my opinion, hasn't changed. Nobody knows if Neighbors is going to be ready or not, but I don't think anything has changed. People look at that clean out surgery and some lazy people in the media have misinterpreted what that clean out surgery was. It wasn't a second surgery like the first surgery failed. It was a clean out surgery. And according to Harbaugh, and who's the only one who said anything on this, he's still on track. Now they don't know. And Harbaugh's also said the guys that they brought in, again, he could be lying, but the guys that they brought in have nothing to do with the fact of Neighbors' status. And I'm going to take him for his word on this. But I don't think they know. And I think if you put a gun to John Harbaugh's head, he would say, we don't know. And they've protected themselves. But I don't think anybody really knows. So when Jordan Renan or somebody else says something right now, I think they're guessing. I think they're speculating. And other people pick that up, which we saw this week. And so it comes out multiple reports saying Neighbors isn't going to be here. No. They're based all on Jordan Renan saying on a podcast that he doesn't know if he's going to be ready, that his guess is he's going to be placed on the PUP, which is a good guess. But it's still, in my opinion, that's just a guess. So where I am right now is it's going to be 50-50 whether he's going to be on the PUP or not. And you can bet one way or the other. I'm going to be optimistic here and say he's going to be ready. But again, I'm just being, but if, if we're going to follow suit, somebody out there in another can tweet that out. Well, BBI thinks Neighbors is going to be ready. Sign him for your fantasy team. It's just speculation on my part. So I'm going to speculate that he's going to be ready. It's just a guess, but I don't think it's given that he's going to be on the PUP. But that's me.
I think it's a given he's going to be on the PUP. I think there have been a number of things that kind of said this is probably what's going to happen, going all the way back to during the season last year. The length of time from injury to surgery for him was quite a bit. If you look at Patrick Mahomes, he tears his ACL. He had surgery like 2 days later. Again, different injuries. I'm not saying they're the same thing. But the longer it takes to get to surgery, that means there's a lot of swelling. There's some other stuff going on.
Well, he had a meniscus tear.
And they couldn't go in and take care of it. Then he has the cleanup. Now, while that is not a second surgery to fix a problem, it is to clean up after surgery. Those do not always happen to every ACL surgery. You don't always have another cleanup after that. Again, you could go back to that softball thing and make whatever you want of it. I saw a guy that walked differently than he did the year before, and it was still pretty close to heading to when camp is going to start. That, to me, said he's a ways away from actually running, like running where you're trying to juke anybody and you're trying to avoid contact.
Right.
Smart money says this is your long-term answer at wide receiver if he's healthy. I just don't think – I think the Giants are being very smart with what they've said. I think you're 100% correct. John Harbaugh didn't say anything any different to make you think something's changed. But the problem with all that is we are all going on the assumption that when he says nothing's really changed and he's on schedule, we never knew what that schedule was to begin with. So if that schedule is said, well, all along we've expected it's going to be October and November and nothing's changed – the only thing that we don't know from that statement was what the actual schedule was.
Well, they did say that the schedule was for him to try to be ready by opening day.
But see, that's a whole bit difference of try to be ready and we expect him to be ready. Those are not.
No, those are my words. But I'm using so don't take my words as his words. But I think I have to go back and look at the specific quotes. But I think it was always like they were going. The target was no. I do want to say this. He is going to be on the PUP when training camp starts. So
for sure,
I think there's no doubt that when. In what are we talking about again? It's the 12th today, and we're trying the 29th. So when the players report on the 28th, 29th, he's going to be on the PUP. So no one should freak out about that because he's going to be on the PUP when training camp starts. What John and I are talking about is he going to be on the PUP in September? And that's what we're debating right now.
I'm leaning towards, again, now I don't have any inside information, but all along I've kind of had this feeling this is how it's going to go. I think it makes sense, especially if he's just trying to even get ready to be available for even a little bit of. Now, remember last year, Andrew Thomas was it kept being talked about as if he was going to be, at some point, and all of a sudden into camp, he's still not doing anything. Right. The first 2 weeks go by and he plays a partial game against the Chiefs in week 3.
Right.
I think the Giants will pup him. They're not going to risk that long term. They want him long term. There's nothing super to be gained by having him for 4 or 5 games if it means that the rest of his season is still a basic struggle to get to. If you can lengthen the time of rehab so that when he does come back, he's much closer to full speed than he would be if you just kind of got him in there at 85% and he starts taking a beating at 85%. Right. So I think that's the way it's going to go. But again, we'll know more. But if you
pup him, John, I don't think he's a factor for most of the season. And the reason I say is he cannot practice when he's on the PUP.
Sure.
He cannot practice in camp, and that means he's not going to be able to practice in September. And remember, this is a completely new offense for him. He hasn't worked with Jaxson Dart a lot, and he's not going to be in football shape. And he's coming off the ACL. So if you PUP him, and again, you're right in this sense, you don't want to risk it too much and have him re-tear the knee, then his career is probably in jeopardy at that point. So you say, you know what, we're just going to be super careful with him, and we don't care if we don't even have him until he's just a player for us in November and December at that point. Or you say, you know what, he's close, and if we do this, we're not going to have him that much. We're not going to have him when we need him in October of this year. So if you pup him, to me, it's not just okay, he's back in 4 weeks, because I don't think he can go from 0 to 60. He can't just come, especially coming off an ACL. He's not going to be able to. I don't think he plays in October that much if you pup him either. That's me. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and if he starts on the pup though, right, in camp anyway, he's already missing. And so the second you start going 2, 3, if you miss 4 weeks of camp at that point, now you're really, because like you said, if he's on a pup, he's not practicing.
Right.
So you go 4 weeks into camp, and then all of a sudden he's going to come off. I just feel like the safety net that they're going to want to, because he is your long-term answer at wide receiver. Right. And this injury is either going to be fully healed and good to go, or this is just one of those things that for him, he might never really come back from. That's going to be for them. They've got to walk that fine line of, do we want to push this a little bit? And I guess he's going to play a role in it too, right? Like Neighbors is going to have a say in whether or not he feels he's ready to go. So I just get this feeling, and I felt it all along, that he's going to be there. Now you can disagree with me, and that's fine. But
there's a very good chance you're right.
But I mean,
I'm just trying to tell everybody else who have seen these Twitter things that he's definitely going to be on the PUP. That's not coming from any known news. There's nothing out there that's that we've been told, that's been said, that definitively says, oh yeah, all signs point to him being on the PUP. That's just people saying, I think he's going to be on the PUP. Then somebody else picks it up and they're reporting it as a fact. So that's what I'm saying is just
what's ironic about this situation. I guess maybe it's irony, maybe it's not irony, is that the number of Giants other receivers, right, that they brought in, right, they've all dealt with various injuries throughout. You're bringing Odell Beckham, and we know he's got some extensive injuries. Mooney's been injured off and on. JuJu Smith's been injured off and on, and they're not younger guys.
Right.
Calvin Austin's been injured off and on and hasn't been a super performer anyway.
Right.
And Slayton's been injured off and on quite a bit. So this, it's not like, and then you're relying on a pure rookie draft pick in Malachi Fields.
Well, and Beckham here again, I'm prefacing my remarks that when Beckham left here, I was all on board with that. So I don't want people going, well, Eric likes Beckham and he's just. I think Beckham can really help Neighbors because not just the LSU connection, but he was a superstar wide receiver who's gone through multiple ACL injuries, 2 ACL injuries. That he, no pun intended, he could be a crutch for him, a sounding board, somebody who can. I imagine Neighbors when Beckham went back to LSU, which he would, he'd see him on the sidelines, and he, he probably sort of said, "I want to be like Beckham someday." He probably still looks up to him. So I think Beckham can be a really good, positive influence on Neighbors in the sense that he can say, "Look at all the crap that I went with all the injuries, and I'm still here." And you keep your head up and you'll get through this. So I think Beckham helps from that standpoint too, that he can be sort of like keep Neighbors. Because you and I have talked about this before. Neighbors is a little bit of a, I don't want to say diva, but he's got to be handled a certain way.
He's been very. He lived up to, I think, Brian Daboll pounding that whole he's a dog,
Yeah.
And really, again, that was one of the biggest problems, not to shit on Daboll now, but that was one of the biggest problems he had is he's that parent who wants to be their kid's best friend. And he wanted to be their best friend so much. And you built these guys up, and Neighbors missed a lot of time. He missed a lot of practice time. He had different things. He kind of talks a bit when he probably shouldn't. I know Optimus said, and I agree with him. I kind of would like to see Neighbors maybe not talk so much. You haven't done anything yet. Accumulating stats in a shitty season when your team has lost a bunch of games, it doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, that's great, and I think he's a good wide receiver. I think he'd be a very good wide receiver. But he's kind of had some moments too where I'm like, wow, you could have done something there. What happened?
He said some bad drops. I mean, he's
100%.
And some of that was because he was overused and overtaxed. But there were, he had some drops that cost them games where they're still in the game. And I'm not trying to shit on him. I'm just saying what John's saying. He doesn't have the pelts on the wall, to use a Bill Parcells expression. He doesn't have all these pelts on the wall that he can sort of you got to do a little bit more, Neighbors, before you get treated like Daboll was treating you. You have to. Right. You haven't even done what Beckham did. And Beckham still didn't have enough pelts on the wall. Beckham had 3 of the best receiving years ever, but the team wasn't winning. To me, pelts are both performance, but your team is winning. But Neighbors hasn't done what Beckham did. So you need to, again, and the thing that we all don't want to think about is this: is he's coming off an ACL and a meniscus, and he had a labrum tear. We've seen receivers like Beckham who had injuries who weren't really the same ever again. So again, I don't want to freak people out.
Right. You have no idea.
There's a really good chance, even if he does regain his form, it might not even happen this year. It will happen next year when he's got, this out of his system with coming back, because there's a psychological component to this. And whether you agree with it or not, it is around the NFL that everyone in the NFL thinks that MetLife's turf is a problem. And I guarantee you that the people in that locker room think the same thing, so he's got to get over this thing that I'm going back onto this shitty turf. Yep. Whether you think it's shitty or not, they think it is. The perception matters more than reality in this game. You still see it. The soccer players are saying it about, I think it was somebody from France. They were like, this turf sucks, So there's this perception out there that MetLife's. So he's got to come back and be like, I can run on this turf without tearing my knee again. So
let's
get to the other receiver.
Yeah, the joking about keeping it tight. We're gonna try.
Yeah.
The receiving core, though, we could go through all the different ones, but let's kind of look at it first from a number standpoint. Let's use the assumption for the moment. Let's use my assumption that Neighbors is.
That Neighbors is out. Yeah.
How many receivers are we carrying? 5,
he said 5 or 6.
6?
He said 5 or 6.
So you've literally got Malachi Fields is guaranteed.
He's guaranteed, and Neighbors is guaranteed if Neighbors is on the 53. But like we're going to assume he's not. But Fields is the only one. Yeah. Fields is the only one who's guaranteed right now.
And then Slayton, you almost think is there because of cost, but I
don't think he's guaranteed. I don't think he's guaranteed.
Because the weird thing is Slayton's extremely limited. He's either the essentially, if you just want to go X, Y, I guess, or you just want to go left, right, he's the wide receiver out on either side. He's not playing the slot. He's never playing the slot. He's not your possession receiver either. So you don't really want to use him for that because he just can't. He's not reliable enough to be that guy. So his role is either he's starting and he's that guy who's playing basically Neighbors' spot if Neighbors is not there. Or where is he? Because I think Fields is going to get pushed really hard to be in that lineup early on.
Now there are reporters out there that insist Slayton is safe. But I think part of this goes back to what you and I have talked about. Slayton is a great guy, and so when the reporters interview him, they love him because he's a smart guy. He's personable. He's a hardworking guy. They've seen him survive all these different coaching changes. So I think that's affecting their judgment. But again, we've talked about like with Hyatt before and some of the other wide receivers. The Giants were desperate for wide receivers last year when Neighbors went down, and Hyatt was so bad that they even went out and brought back Isaiah Hodgins, and Hodgins quickly superseded. Where I'm going with this is this. Slayton had 37 catches last year and 1 touchdown. And Jaxson Dart was playing really well at quarterback. He ran for 9 touchdowns. He threw 15 touchdowns or whatever it was. Theo Johnson caught 5 touchdowns, and Mr. Drops, as everyone, again, Slayton drops passes. People were saying, well, Theo drops a lot. Well, Theo had 5 touchdown passes and was the second leading receiver on the team. Darius had 37 catches and only 1 touchdown on a team that was dying for a wide receiver. To me, again, and Carl Banks said it in the podcast that I was just talking about. And you don't see Carl Banks kind of diss a lot of Giants players, but he was saying, he was a 5th round draft pick and he lived beyond his draft status until he got his new contract, and now he's playing down to his draft status. And I thought that was a really good way of kind of putting it.
Interesting.
And if Carl Banks is saying that, it means you and I aren't like way out there on this, because Carl Banks, if we're optimistic, he's like Mr. Optimistic. And I just think Slayton does a lot of the same things as Mooney does. And they clearly, and I think Mooney has done more, and Mooney has a connection with Nagy. And I just think that Slayton's not as sure thing as people think he is, especially because they brought in the 3 wide receivers they did. If they hadn't brought in Beckham and JuJu Smith and Braxton Berrios, I think Slayton, you'd say, well, he's going to make the team. Now I'm like, I don't think it's a given. I think there's a good chance he does, but I don't think it's a given. I think the only 2 people that are guaranteed to be on the team are Neighbors if he's healthy and Fields. I think everybody else can be either on this team or off this team.
And it's a very veteran heavy group. You know what I mean? It's not like there's 2 veterans and a bunch of younger guys. There's a lot of veterans on his team. Again, not all of them have played, upper echelon type games and seasons, but they've been on teams. They played throughout seasons. They've been around. So it'll be interesting how this shakes out. And then you've got guys like Ryan Miller. You've got guys like Braxton Berrios, who brings the special teams piece. And that's opened up because of Gunner's deal. And I think Gunner, if he had not gotten injured, I think he had an inside track to not only be the returner, but he showed enough last year that he could be that guy that could come in as your 4th or 5th wide receiver, because it saves you a roster spot, because my special teams guy can also play a position that really helps you out. The way the Giants are going now, and they're hoping the same thing. So a guy like Deonte Banks, a guy like Braxton Berrios but Berrios, I think, brings far less to an offense than what Gunnar Olszewski. Again, stats might prove otherwise, but Berrios hasn't done much of anything in the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Berrios has done more, but he just hasn't done much in the recent years in the receiving game. But he's a good returner. So Berrios, to me, his only path to the roster right now, and it's a legit path, is he's got to be the returner, both the punt and the kick returner. If he can do that, he's got a good shot. But again, I start having trouble who makes it and who doesn't. This is the way I look at it. Again, we've run into, and I'm going to, with the warning of this, is that there are always players in the non-contact part of the offseason that flash and look great. And then when you start getting the pads on where you can hit people, they kind of fade away. So you got to have that caveat. So if you went back and looked at BBI in previous years, and we were talking about guys we were excited about coming out of the spring, there'll be a fairly decent amount of them that didn't make the team because once the hitting started, it changed. However, Calvin Austin's name keeps coming up multiple sources, multiple times throughout the spring. And then Bob Papa brought it up in the recent podcast too, but John Schmelk has talked about it. The other reporters who have talked about it, but I think Calvin Austin was a good value signing for him. And so far the early indications are that it was, because he seems to be making plays in the spring in the passing game. So I think Calvin, and plus he's got return skills. So I think Calvin Austin's in the picture. Not guaranteed to make a roster, but I think he's got a leg up right now because he had a very strong spring. The other guy, in terms of the recent guys that they were signed, what's interesting, because everyone was focused on Odell, and Odell, Bob Papa brought him up too, and so did Carl Banks, and saying, we'll have to see if Odell has that, that super gear he had is gone. That sort of like, where he's in the blink of an eye, he turns a slant into a 80-yard touchdown. That's gone. Whether he's got the 4-4, 4-5 stuff, we'll have to see. But what's still there, what's not gone away, is he can still catch. He still knows how to manipulate defensive backs. He knows how to get open. So if he's got that combined, if he can stay healthy, I think Beckham's there. But the guy that was making plays late, that was mentioned, was the guy that you have been sort of high on them signing, was JuJu Smith.
Yeah.
So I've seen a number of people saying, you know what? And it was in that mini camp, JuJu Smith looked pretty good. I've seen that a couple of times now. And JuJu is one of those other guys too, where he was doing really well further back in his career. In the last couple of years, he's been more like the fourth receiver in Kansas City, not as high. But he's been with Nagy. I mean, sorry, he's been with he's been with Nagy.
No, Nagy. Yeah.
With Nagy. And so I think a lot of people say he's not going to make the roster. I wouldn't be. I think he's got a good path to the roster. And the irony is that both Calvin Austin and JuJu are more slot guys. So they would almost be carrying two slot receivers, which teams do, but they'd be very different types of slot guys. So right now I have a good feeling about Calvin. I have a good feeling about JuJu, even though that they play the same position.
And diametrically different. You got a 5'9", and that's stretching at Calvin Austin, a 6'1", 215-pound JuJu Smith-Schuster. So I think it depends on what the Giants want to do, but I'm really starting to believe that they're going to lean towards size at different positions. If the differentiating point is for them is like, well, this guy can catch and he's got some speed, and this guy can catch and a little less speed, but they're kind of equal. I think size is going to win out. They're going big in a number of areas. So I think Calvin has to really play well to beat out. Now, Smith-Schuster has the one negative piece is I think he's a little bit older and he's had some injuries, so he didn't have a ton of speed before. So I think he's lost a little bit of that. So he really has to win by body positioning, physicality, and running his routes. But if he can prove to be that guy, and I felt that was a signing that I pat myself on the back. I called that they probably would, and then they did, because it made sense. It made sense for what it is. Now, again, the Giants have such a cluster of players that are kind of all somewhat similar in terms of they have limitations to a lot of what they do, and they're not spectacular at any one thing. Odell is the one that I'll say for you are correct. He's probably the most spectacular when it comes to being able to catch, whether it's one-handed, two hands, coming out of cuts and the ball's just there and snatching it. I think he's got the best hands of any of the receivers that we bring in, but none of these guys has they're not the entire package, or that obviously they'd be starting players for somebody else. So it'll be interesting to see how this group shakes out. Now, guys like Bo Collins, Jalen Hyatt, Dalen Combre, all those guys, the path to the roster for these guys, I think, is a pretty
practice
sketchy and difficult one.
Yeah. I mean, Jalen Hyatt's not going to make this team. I mean, watch he surprises all of us. Everyone's convinced Jalen, but the other guys, I mean, Bo Collins, I saw another discussion that there are people that think that are close to the team that think Bo Collins has as much talent as anybody on this roster in terms of physical ability, and I think that's why he was wowing the previous coaching staff. So he is the one guy, again, not because of anything he's done, but just because those comments have been made. If anyone's going to come out of nowhere and surprise anybody, I would still say would probably be Bo Collins, but it's not based on anything. The one guy that has not made any noise, as far as I can tell, is Darnell Mooney yet. That doesn't mean he's a bad signing, but I haven't seen a lot of, like, again, remember the press didn't have complete access to most of the OTAs. They only got into 3 OTA practices. And a lot of the OTAs and the mini camps were spent on running and special teams and things like that. But I haven't seen a lot of, like, wow, Mooney's been making explosive plays. I've seen more of Austin than Mooney. But this was my question with you, John. If Neighbors isn't your number one wide receiver because he's not available, who's even the number one guy on opening day against Dallas? I mean, who's your, like, number one? I mean, I think you and I are going to say it's likely. It's likely, pun.
Yeah, right.
But in terms of pure wide receivers, that's why I'm still saying Beckham catches the game winner against Dallas, is because Beckham could arguably be the best
starter
outside wide receiver on this team right now, unless it's Mooney or Fields really comes on, or Slayton's still on the team and he gets over the sports hernia and they get the best out of him or something like that. But, like, who's the number one wide receiver if Neighbors is? I don't know who that is.
Yeah, and
it's Beckham right now. That's my guess.
I can't argue with you on that because, again, he can play the same position.
Right.
Slayton's the only other one that I think you could play there because he really can't play much of anywhere else, but he's not that guy. He's not the guy. He's the guy you want to run straight down the field if you can. Straight down, deep crossings, maybe deep post, but you don't want Slayton running a 6 or 7 yard, a hook, or you want him coming back, or you want him, break in and break back out kind of thing. Because his hand-eye coordination has never been the greatest. He drops too many passes. He's just not that guy. And even
if
a guy
3rd and 11 against Dallas, and you're on the 30-yard line, Dallas's 30-yard line, are you throwing the Slayton in that situation? I'm not throwing the Slayton on 3rd and 11 against Dallas on opening night. That's me.
And I truly believe they're going to give Malachi Fields every opportunity to be a big-time producer in this offense. Maybe not force him to be a starter, but he might actually end up being one of the wide receiving starters. But I do think they go a lot of one wide receiver sets early on in the season. We talked about this already. I think they'll go jumbo a lot early on, and that will reduce the angst that we have right at the moment of who's the starter, because it's going to be kind of like player situation dependent on who you put out there versus this guy is the starter in Neighbors' place until you get to that point. But yeah, it's hard to say, but hard to argue that it wouldn't be Beckham.
Yeah, we could spend another half hour on this, but we better start moving quicker than this. All right, tight ends. Real quick. It is fascinating. It'll be in my article tomorrow how many times the Ravens were in two tight end sets with a fullback, sometimes even 3 tight ends. They're going to be a very tight end centric offense. The coaching staff is way higher on this room than almost any Giants fan out there. There are multiple quotes from Jim Harbaugh. They'll be in the article tomorrow. And Tim Kelly, who's back with the Giants as the tight ends coach, who was the offensive coordinator last year, about how good this tight end room is. Whether you agree or not, John Harbaugh thinks this is one of the best, if not the best, tight end rooms, believe it or not, in the NFL. And Harbaugh not only loves Likely, he loves Theo Johnson, and so does Tim Kelly. And they think that both Theo Johnson and Isaiah Likely are going to be studs on this team. You and I have talked about this before. that we don't think Theo Johnson was used correctly by the last coaching staff. I think this coaching staff does know how to use him correctly, and I think they expect bigger and better things from this group. Patrick Ricard is in this group too, and he's going to be gigantic in this offense. He's going to be on the field at least a third of the time, maybe more. And he was in Baltimore, and there's a great quote from him that I'm just teasing this. I used a quote from him in the article for tomorrow too. But if you factor in Theo Johnson, Likely, and Ricard, those are three of the most important players on this offensive football team, and they play basically in the same. They're coached in the same position room. This is a huge part of the team, and the coaching staff is way higher on this room than almost every fan out there. And I'm actually pretty excited about this if everyone stays healthy. The question is there a path now? And I think Manhurts is going to make the team. I'm one of those few people that think he's on the bubble. I don't think Manhurts is on the bubble. I think they see him as the inline blocking tight end. I think they see Likely as the movable chess piece. Theo Johnson is the two-way tight end. I think they see Manhurts as the inline blocker. And the question to me is there any path for Fidone or Tanner Connor at all to make the 53, or are they just their best hope is the practice squad? I'm guessing both are the practice squad, but Fidone, who had an off-season cleanup surgery late, and they're hoping he's ready for training camp too. That's out there too. I think Fidone is the bubble guy. Does he make as the fourth tight end, or do they just go with three tight ends plus the fullback?
When you're juggling a lot of other pieces on the roster, it makes it hard to take that bubble guy in a position that they're limited in other things that they can do per se.
Right.
Like you could take a bubble guy at defensive back. You can play him you can play him at kick returner. You can play him at punt. You can play him on coverage.
Right.
These tight ends can play coverage to a bit, but they're specific coverage. They're guys that can, you can interchange them with almost anybody. A linebacker, and he can do the same thing. So it's a little different, a little harder. So I agree with you there. It's funny because I think, though you're right, Likely's going to be the move guy. I think he's going to be it's the reverse. And I said this before, it's the reverse of the Ravens, where you had the two tight end pieces with the Ravens. Likely was the second guy. He was the option to kind of make a bigger play down the field or whatever. But Andrews was the guy that they targeted often and to eat up chunk yards and get him first downs and things like that. I think Likely's going to be the targeted guy early on. He's going to be the guy to get first downs. He's going to be the guy that they look for first. And Johnson's going to be the guy that they slip out into the pass game deeper down the field than we're used to, because he can move. He's got size. He can block. So I think it's interesting, those two. I agree with you. I was shocked that Manhurts was re-signed, but I think they have a specific role for him in mind.
Right. But remember, you and I thought they were going to sign the other Kolar to be the blocking tight end. So they from the Ravens, but so they signed Manhurts as the blocking tight end. But you and I still saw a path for a blocking tight end.
Yes, agreed.
So my prediction is this, and this is with the understanding that Isaiah Likely is actually statistically is coming off his worst year of his 4 years in the NFL. He only had 30-something catches last year and 1 touchdown. I think Likely is going to lead the Giants in both receptions and touchdowns. I think he's going to be that big part of the offense. And that's even if Neighbors is on the team from the get-go, because I think Likely is going to be a centerpiece of this offense, and I think Dart's going to love him. I think you and I last year talked about this over and over again about we didn't have the size in the red zone to throw to people now. Now they got Theo Johnson. They got Likely. They got maybe Malachi Fields. Hopefully he's going to be pushing for playing time. I would definitely have him out there in red zone situations. From 20-yard in, I would have Malachi Fields out there. Beckham plays like he's a tall guy. I think Dart is going to love the targets he has to throw into the red zone now, because I think he's going to be able to throw a high pass that only his guys can get. And if you do anything, if you're bored, I recommend Giants fans go back and look at any Isaiah Likely highlight clip package, and you'll be amazed at how well Isaiah Likely comes down with these catches from these high pointed catches and
Sure.
run after the catch stuff. And again, there's a fantastic long quote from John Harbaugh on what Likely's going to bring to this team. And that'll be on my article tomorrow. But I think Likely's, there's a very good chance he's like if you have a fantasy football team, I draft Likely because I think he's going to be a centerpiece in this offense. And on opening day against Dallas, I think he's going to be like the go-to guy.
You could also say that Likely with a spectacular catch that was this much of his toe being out of bounds away from a touchdown scored early in the season that would have won the game for the Ravens, that may have actually meant that John Harbaugh never leaves the Ravens, by the way, because that game would have given them the division. That last game of the season wouldn't have mattered. That literally that play alone was spectacular catch. It just didn't count, and it was out of bounds, led to where they are today, that it actually leads
and
into
who was the wide receiver who knocked the Ravens out of that game? I mean, the last game. It was Calvin Austin.
Right.
Yeah. So
there's, it's it all comes around. It all comes around.
All right, let's move on to offensive lines too.
Yeah, we got to run through.
We got to run through these.
We're deep, and we're on offense. All right.
All right. The only thing I'll say this is there weren't many changes with the starters, and including some of the backups, except the huge one was adding the new right guard, which was a gigantic change, literally, figuratively. They've got a real huge upgrade at right guard. I think this guy's going to be a tone setter for the offense. He's going to be kind of the identity, along with Andrew Thomas, of the offensive team. He's a building block. And so you've got Illuminor's back, and he's sort of that position settled. So the Giants, as long as everyone stays healthy, they're good at the tackles. They've got a new right guard who looks like he's on the path to be who they hope he is. Schmitz is back. The question mark with him is, can he stay healthy, and will he be? He had a better year, probably arguably his best year last year, but it could be even better. And then you've got Runyon, who's steady, and he's here for at least one more year. And the question is does anyone push those five guys? Probably not, but if somebody did, it would probably be, as you and I have talked about, the guard they got from the Ravens who could push, maybe push Runyon. But that, to me, I think the offensive line is kind of settled. Much better depth, though. To me, like, the depth situation is infinitely better than it's been.
For sure. And again, another position group to look at that's going to see massive changes in 27.
Right.
That there is a lot of guys here on 1-year deals, and Runyon, whether he makes the team or doesn't make the team, or if the Giants move him, and that is a possibility if he doesn't kind of fit what they're at, and if some of these other guys kind of step up, the Giants have there are teams out there that would take Runyon. His salary's not that bad that they could take him, and it would free up cap space for the Giants if it were to work out. I don't see them doing it, but if some of these guys step up, if Davis looks good, you've got Mauanoa's penciled in already. Falele could easily step up and be like, okay, we're comfortable with him, and Runyon fits other schemes. The team I would keep a close eye, two teams I keep a close eye on, is one, Green Bay. The other one would be Tennessee. Runyon knows the offense that Dayball's running. If the Tennessee Titans need an offensive lineman, if they want somebody they can feel comfortable with, that is a natural potential trading position or spot for us if we look that route. I don't see it happening, but I don't think Runyon's guaranteed of being on this team per se. I just don't think they're actively trying to, but I think he's just the one guy that really doesn't fit what they're really trying to do on that offensive line. It's just not his skill set.
It's just whether, to me, it's two things with him. Is number one, Falele, is he push him? Does he push him? Because if Falele, and I know a lot of people are way down on Falele. I don't think Falele is really good, but I don't think he's as terrible as Ravens fans have said. But if he can push Stinney, then that's another thing. Then what you're saying could come true. The other is, do they even want to take that risk, or do they just want to put that off to next year when they get another guard? So, plus the guy that's sort of lurking in the background too is the guy that you and I were both excited that they drafted was J.C. Davis.
Yes,
that right now he's at tackle for them, still at left tackle, along with Marcus Bowe. but if they kick him inside, that would be bear watching about, with Stinney as well too. I mean, not Stinney, with Runyon as well too, is keep an eye on that. And again, the guy that's sort of buried to me is Neal. I know some people still hold out hope for him.
Don't sleep on Neal.
But he's still there. But at right guard, third team right guard. I mean, if he was at left guard, I would say that would be a little more interesting, but he's not. And so right now, I don't know what the path is for Neal there. Ezeudu's ahead of him. Ezeudu's been playing second team right tackle. And I think Ezeudu has got a decent chance to make the team, but I think the guy that clearly is like the third tackle on the team is Marcus Bowe, and which I think is a good sign because I like the guy. So so he's kind of like your swing tackle right now. But I think the offensive line's in a good place. It's at the very least, I think this is I really do. I think this is a top 10 offensive line, and I think it's a stronger offensive line than it was last year. And I think it's going to be and people were worrying about the coaching change. I think the coaching with Bloomgren's going to be fine. He fits what they're going to do more. They're going to be a very run heavy team. Andrew Thomas, if it makes you feel anybody better, Andrew Thomas was interviewed by John Schmelk, and he seems overjoyed with the direction of this team. I mean, he was as happy as I've seen Andrew Thomas be in an interview. And that was a Schmelk interview, if anyone's curious, if they want to go back, when he was sitting down with the offensive line. Also in that offensive line interview, which was interesting, was Patrick Lucas, who's now the backup center, replacing Schlotman, who left to join Daboll again. Yeah. But Patrick Lucas sounds like a coach to me. Boy, that guy's smart. He's a big guy too. I'd never heard him speak before, but that guy sounds like a coach. That's all I had with the line. I think the line's in a good situation. I think the Giants are going to have one of the best offensive lines in there. Not top 3, not top 5, but top 10. I think they're going to be a top 10 offensive line.
And one of the things for Andrew Thomas, I think too, is even if he has a little something going on, this has got to be one of the healthier off seasons he's had in the last 3-4 years. Like he came out of the season fairly decent, where he's been having ankle surgeries, and he's constantly dealing with his ankle or foot. And last year he started, basically missed most of camp, if not all of camp, didn't start the first couple of games of the season. So this has got to be for him one of the end. Sometimes there's a whole mental piece too, right? Like sometimes those changes make some of the physical things not as bad or feel as bad. Or maybe sometimes the physical isn't as bad that the mental makes it seem to be. So to have a much better positive outlook, and I think Harbaugh is that positive outlook for these guys.
He's had like 6 offensive line coaches since he's been here. I mean, it's been ridiculous.
Yeah, right.
So, he had 2 in 1 year. Remember that 1 year when they fired
Colombo? Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. All right, so we're done with the offense. We'll quickly do defense because I know we're pushing.
We're pushing
defensive line. To me, this is the other one, like wide receiver. What a mess. And I mean by mess there's always a lot of bodies here, John. I'm not sure we can figure it out much beyond, we know DJ Reader is going to be the nose tackle. But even guys who I thought might be at nose, like this Lecky Fotu guy, they've been playing out at end. And I've seen multiple reporters now, when they list the depth chart in practice, having 3 defensive linemen. So I'm not even sure what the depth chart is going to look like in terms of where players are going to be. But when the Giants issue a depth chart, it may have 3 defensive linemen now instead of 2, like we've seen. And we'll have to see how much they play 3-man fronts and 4-man fronts and 2-man fronts and all of that. Because I know you and I have talked over and over again about they've got 2 linebackers basically playing defensive end, and they're small and all that. So we don't even really know but all we know is there's a ton of bodies. I think somebody posted, and I'd have to go back and do the numbers, but I think there's 14 DLs on the team, or is it 12? Whatever it is.
I see 12, but
yeah. So I think 10 of the 12 are new. I think someone tweeted that out. I haven't double checked that, but somebody tweeted out 10 of the 12 are new. I don't know if that's true. But anyways, a lot of them are new. This whole room is completely different.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Roy Robertson Harris and Darius Alexander are the two.
And Roy Robertson Harris has got an Achilles tear still.
Yeah, so I mean, those were the two returning that I see.
Yeah, so everybody else is new. So it's crazy. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen, and we're going to talk about this with the linebackers in a second, but the linebacker room was blown up. I mean, it's completely so none of our. I mean, Micah McFadden was on IR last year, so in a way he wasn't here. But we'll get to that in a second. But the defensive line room, to me, I don't know what it's going to look like other than I know DJ Reader's going to be there. Banks and Papa were saying very nice things about Darius Alexander. I'll throw that out in the OTAs as much as they see, but they say he just looks different. He looks and he's acting more mature, and by the way, they remind me we get to it. They had interesting comments about your boy Deonte Banks too. But I think right now Darius Alexander is, and I've heard a couple of things from, again, it was Schmelk or one of his colleagues, but again, so Darius Alexander looks like he's at least headed in the right direction. So I think you got him, you got DJ Reader, and probably Shelby Harris, because he's another veteran that they signed in free agency that was a starter in the league for a long time, but he's an older guy. But I think after that, it's anyone's guess how many defensive linemen do they keep and who those defensive linemen are going to be. And there's just a lot of veterans here and just a lot of like, who the hell knows how this is going to turn out.
I think too many people, media people, and Giants fans try too hard to go. The Giants, they move on. You get rid of one of your best players, and then you go, we've got to get a guy who's the equivalent of that guy. And in reality, what the Giants are doing is they're filling a scheme of what they're trying to play, not filling for a particular player. So you're not trying to get another all-pro guy to play nose tackle, defensive tackle onto that guy. You're trying to get guys that can fit your defense because you have potential all-pro players all across your linebacking group, edge and linebacker.
Right.
You're filled with those.
Right.
So you need guys that play roles, and you need guys that do certain things. And I mean, if you look at some of the size, I was looking at these guys like
they're all like 330 pounds.
Yeah, DJ Reader 335, Lecky Fotu, if he even makes a team, 330. Tupoa is 350. Bobby Jameson Travis is 328. These guys they are the big nose guys. They're the guys to keep the ones off of our linebackers, whether the edge guys, the linebackers themselves. Those guys are pretty interchangeable in where they're going to be playing. I mean, Carter's inside, outside. Reese is going to be inside, outside. Edmonds can be inside, outside. So you want to keep guys off from them. We've got guys. Now, the question will be is how many guys? How many guys do they keep that are going to be like the big noses? And if you look at the Ravens, they play two huge guys next to each other often.
Right.
So Alexander's really the odd man of that group because he's a little taller. He's 310, and I think that's probably a pumped up 310. So he's more of a 3-4 end guy than he is the tackle guys in this scheme.
But he's been starting since Roy Robertson Harris went down. He's been starting. So, and I think, like you said, do they play two big guys and then also have the smaller guy? Like, so Lecky's been playing, I think Lecky's been like their fourth DL, and he's been playing end even. But in an end, is their end basically more of a – all right. So to go back a little bit, again, this is – you and I are familiar with this. Other guys may not be familiar. We've talked about before, like offensively, a lot of the Giants fans may not know what a power running game looks like because they haven't seen it in more than 10 years.
Right.
A lot of Giants fans – probably don't really know what it looks like to have a defensive line whose job is not so much to make plays, but to keep players off of the linebackers. So when John and I were watching Giants when we were growing up and older fans, the Giants ran a 2-gap system. That's when you have the Jim Burts, the Leonard Marshalls, the George Martins, those guys. Their job wasn't even though Leonard Marshall would make a lot of plays. Their jobs were more to sort of keep people off of the LT, Carl Banks, Kerry Carson, Gary Reasons. That's what this job of this line is going to be. I'm not saying they're just going to play 2-gap, but it's interesting. They say they're going to play a whole bunch of stuff, 1.5 gap, 1 gap, all this stuff. But their job is going to be more keep the linebackers, and as John says, that means the edge guys too, clean, so they make the plays. So you only have to basically have, so that's why DJ Reader doesn't have to be like getting like Dexter Lawrence would be like a monster presence in the middle of the field in terms of getting to the quarterback at times. He doesn't have to be that, but you want him to be, in which he has been, a monster presence in terms of they got to put two guys on him just to run the football. Because if they put two guys on DJ Reader and they have to put a guy and a half maybe on the guy next to him, then the linebackers are going to be able to run free and stuff. So it's not so much so why I'm bringing this up is don't look for so much of these guys making tackles or sacks or plays behind the line of scrimmage. It's more like, are they tying people up so the other guys can clean up? And that's what John was talking about.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, and I'm glad you said we talked about the 86 team. You can go back a little bit further. If you missed that, go back and watch that video. George Martin, for a number of years, Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, whoever's making those ultimate decisions, didn't really want Martin to be the every down guy. It was D. Hardison, it was Curtis McGriff, and it was Eric Dorsey.
Big fat guys again.
They would have the bigger defensive ends who essentially were they were defensive tackles. If it was a 4-3 team, they would have been a defensive tackle.
Leonard Marshall really was a defensive tackle in that system. I mean, we think of him as an end, but he really was a defensive tackle.
Was, but they played him in a 3, which he had 5. He really was a 5 technique responsibility. Right. He had it all. So that's how they played. But Martin, ultimately, the Giants just didn't feel comfortable with some of those other guys. Martin ends up playing the bulk of the snaps in the 86 team as it moved along. Dorsey took a lot of early down stuff, but Martin played a ton. Darius Alexander is kind of going to be in this world. He would be huge, by the way, back in 86. Darius Alexander would be one of the biggest guys, but now he's just an average guy.
Yeah.
He's going to be that end guy. Oh, thank you. He's going to be that end guy on the defensive line because he's just a little bit different. He's more lean. He can give them that inside outside bit. He can play. But you're right. I still believe their job is going to be less about can they break this gap, can they break that gap. It is going to be to hold people up. It's going to be to push and take areas of the field and make the offensive line have to collapse on these guys so that you're not just getting pushed into the backfield, and that frees up the Giants' playmakers, which is everybody behind him.
Right. And JJ, man, thank you. And also, we actually addressed both of these questions. So I'm going to spend a whole lot of time because we're going to have to wrap this up soon. But we're not ignoring you, but we did answer both these questions here. So just rewind back to the offensive line and the running back discussion because we got into both of specifically those questions too. So anything else on the defensive line before we go to linebackers? To me, this is one of the positions I'm a little bit nervous about still. They've thrown a lot of numbers on. Harbaugh doesn't seem to be nervous, but they keep signing guys, which I think indicates that they're not completely comfortable. They just grabbed Ravenell, who was with the Titans, with the defensive coordinator out there that we have now, and he was also where else? He was with somebody else too, but he has a tie with the defensive coordinator we have now. And I think when I already started looking at the draft next year, and I can't help but drafting a defensive tackle in the first round or two still. So this is subjectively speaking, I think this is a position that still needs talent, especially since the guys that we're probably going to be counting on, like the DJ Reader, is towards the end of his career. So I think this is an area that I wouldn't be surprised if we still don't see tinkering going on here. And it's one of the we got to be honest, it's one of the question marks on this team is because Dexter Lawrence is gone. Whether you were really, really high on him or you thought he was overrated, he was still an asset for this team. I think they got a good trade value for him, but subtracting him from this roster is going to hurt. DJ Reader is a good fill-in, but remember they wanted DJ Reader to team with Dexter Lawrence at one point. They were still pursuing DJ Reader even when they had Dexter Lawrence. Now he's got to replace Dexter Lawrence. So I think this is still an open question mark. And if DJ Reader got hurt, for instance, they'd be in a lot of trouble right now. So this is one of those areas that the team that I think is still a little bit of a question mark for them.
Yeah, we'll have to see again. Now, there will be cuts across the league, veteran defensive linemen. who fit what the Giants are trying to do, who probably on the backside of their careers, and teams will cut them based on salary that could be picked up if they need to. I'm not overly concerned because I don't think this isn't going to be a focal point of the defense. It wasn't a focal point with the Ravens. It has a specific function, and the Giants went all in on playmakers behind that group.
Right.
And the one thing I'll say with Dexter Lawrence, regardless of how good he is or was, there were times where he could just disappear. And you can take a guy like that out of the equation because of the position they're in. And if you don't have the other players to take advantage of when you're isolating on that one player, then it really, you lose. And the Giants just never seem to have those players that could take advantage of when the other team had to go out of their way to stop Dexter Lawrence. Now, the Giants have players behind the schemes that in reality, what the Giants want is guys in the front to make sure you can't get to their playmakers. And I think we're just going to rotate bodies. I think the one good thing about this is when you don't have one superstar period and you just have guys, if you could get similar play styles and whatever, you could just rotate those bodies and stay fairly fresh. You're not going to get a ton of stat production, but you are going to get a ton of snap production.
Right. And two things real quick from John Schmelk's position interviews, which are still ongoing on Giants.com. One, Chauncey Goldston was interviewed with the defensive lineman. So I don't know if he's in the defensive lineman room or if he's in the linebacker room. So I hope one of the reporters asked that, but he was with the defensive lineman when John Schmelk was interviewing the defensive lineman. And if that's true, that's another indication that they are going to run more three-man fronts. And that's kind of what he did in Dallas. In Dallas, he was sort of the outside sort of 5 technique guy, but they also moved him in the 3 technique. They kind of moved him around. But if he's there, that makes the defensive line even look more – that makes me think they're going to be more of a 3-man front. But it also makes the outside linebacker depth a little bit – again, because they could always move Arvell Reese out there too if they need to, but it just makes that a little more shallow. But the other thing that came up, the big picture is in all the interviews that John Schmelk did on the defensive side of the ball, the defensive backs, the linebackers, the defensive line, they all said the same thing, that this coaching staff has some non-negotiable principles in terms of what the players have to do in a strategic sense, but from a tactical sense, in terms of how they get it done, they have complete freedom, so they can use their own strengths. And what I mean by that is, so they would say to sort of Brian Burns, they would say, Brian, you cannot lose outside contain on this play, or whatever. But how you make that happen, you use what tools that are in your tool chest to the best of your ability. We're not going to make you do something that you don't want to do. You do it the way that you feel the most comfortable with. But you, at the end of the day, you've got to do the big picture. You've got to do what you want. So all the players love this, including Chauncey Goldston, because they were saying, who doesn't love a coaching staff that says, play to your strengths, do what you're best at, as long as you do what you're supposed to do. So I thought that was really interesting. In every position, they said that, including the defensive line. So they were saying, as long as I'm in my gap, as long as I don't let this running back get through here, I can do what I do best to make sure that doesn't happen. And I thought that was interesting because a lot of the players were saying, the coaches that they've played under with other teams, not just the Giants too, were saying, we were always kind of sort of told we have to play it a certain way, even if we're not good at doing it that way. So I thought that's important to keep in mind in the back of your head when we talk about all these defensive stuff.
So if that does apply to the entire team, you may need to have one person who doesn't get that kind of freedom. And because if you sit down and give Deonte Banks the opportunity to play outside leverage the way he wants to play it, I guarantee you what he means. What he means by that is, as long as he runs towards the sidelines, 15, 20 yards down the field, that's totally fine. All right, let's switch to linebackers because we got to run. This is an interesting group to me because and we're including edge with linebackers. There is so much positional flexibility here. I think the only ones really that aren't going to be interchangeable at all 4 positions is Burns and Thibodeau. They're interchangeable on the outside. They're not going to play inside. But you've got Reese, Carter, Edmonds. They can play inside and outside. McFadden would be the only one that I think plays inside only. He can't kick it. You're not going to kick him outside. There is so much flexibility though with what side of the field, whether they're rushing, whether they're playing the run. These guys can do, in theory, this is one of the most talented groups the Giants have had in a very long time.
What stands out to me, John, is again going back to the 80s when we were looking at the Giants defense, we were spoiled back then, is you saw a big group of players. They were just big. They were big inside, they were big outside. They were all like they were different lengths, but they were all big. This group from sideline to sideline and in the middle, they're all tall. Probably the smallest of the group is Abdul Carter, and he's not a small guy. Abdul Carter is one of those strange body types. He's one of those guys that looks smaller than he is, but Tremaine Edmonds and Arvell Reese are huge, and it keeps coming up in the Schmelk interviews too. But you and I talked about this early on, and it's being more confirmed because they were asking other players, and they've said the same thing that you and I were talking about like a month or two ago. We were saying, I don't think there's been another set of linebackers in the history of the NFL that have been this tall, inside linebackers. They're both 6'5" with long arms. I can't recall, and Schmelk keeps asking players and coaches, do you ever recall seeing linebackers as a group this tall? So, but the same thing is Brian Burns is like that tall, and so is Kayvon Thibodeau. They are all big. They're not just like 240, 250, but they're tall.
Right, right.
That presents a couple of problems for offenses because it's hard to, like John Schmelk was saying, asking Brian Burns, he was saying, boy, Denard seems to be scheming up a lot of free blitzers in these OTAs. Isn't that great? And Brian Burns said, yeah, but he said, it's also because it's very tough for the offensive line to identify who the middle linebackers are because our middle linebackers look like our outside linebackers. And he said it confuses teams. And so as fans were like, what do you mean it confuses? You just look at the number and know the guy, we know who Tremaine Edmonds' number is. He's but that's not how offensive linemen work. They'll look, sometimes they'll look at the stature of the person, and they're just all big and physical. And I think it's going to be tough, but they're not slow. They're not slow. So a lot of times big guys, like back in Harry Carson wasn't fast. Gary Reasons wasn't fast. Back then it didn't matter as much because the players were slower, but these guys are fast. So they're big and fast. And I just think this is the closest the team has come to the 80 group of linebackers. Again, there's no LT here, so I'm not saying that. But this is a really, really good group. And I would say right now, this is the strongest 4 linebackers the Giants have had since the 1980s that I can think of. We've had other good linebackers like Antonio Pierce, but he wasn't flanked by super studs.
Yeah, different.
The Armstead, but again, he wasn't flanked by super studs. I just think this is a really strong group, and there's depth here now too.
Well, and there's potentially you could have 4 playmakers, legit playmakers on the field at the same time.
Oh, I'm
saying at the same time.
Yeah.
And you could be 5 if they drop one in on the line in an obvious passing situation and bring that, but you're more than likely going to be always 4, maybe 3, but generally 4 playmakers, interchangeable, move them around. And the one thing about last year, Brian Burns had a great season. It kind of tailed off a little bit towards the very end. A lot of things happened. He was nicked up a lot. There were a couple of times I was worried he legit was injured and was going to be done, but he kept gutting it out in a bad season. He potentially could have his best year ever. Teams are not going to be able to focus on him because you've got Kayvon, who's in a contract year, by the way. This is a guy who's going to want to get paid, and it's his best chance to have a winning season. I think you're going to see the best Kayvon, depending on whatever that even means.
He looks like he's in a good mental place. He just seems like he's in the best mental place he's been ever to me.
So you've got him. You've got Abdul Carter, which I think knows he needs to live up to his reputation leading into the season, not the one that he got early on about, sleeping and missing meetings and all this stuff. He wants to be that guy, and he doesn't want to I guess I'm projecting for him, but he clearly doesn't want to be seen as the almost guy. Almost got there. Oh, you get a pressure. Pressures don't mean anything in the world of down the road when it comes to stats and wanting to get paid. Just because you got close, teams are going to go, what? Where's the guy with the 15 sacks? He's going to want to be that guy. Then you've got Edmonds and you've got Reese coming in, who Reese has got unlimited physical potential. This group is scary good on paper. It is how quickly do they develop. But I think Brian Burns, because of all that other stuff, is going to see a lot more one-on-one type scenarios. The Giants are going to be able to move him around, and you're not going to be able to single out on him because they've got other players that are going to give you physical mismatches that you're going to have to deal with. And that was one of the biggest things the Giants had with the 80s, just not even counting the fact that LT was LT.
Yeah.
If you moved LT around, you brought in Andy Hedden. Andy Hedden was an athletic freak that you had to watch for. Byron Hunt was a physical freak that you had to watch out for. Carl Banks was another, and then you got guys, Pepper Johnson would come in and come up the middle. You had to watch out for those guys. And I think that's the kind of group that they have. Again, it's lofty praise based on potential, but that potential is something they haven't had in a long time.
It's crazy to me that Arvell Reese isn't getting any attention, despite arguably being the best player in the draft, along with Love, and being the Giants' first pick. No one seems to be talking about him, but I think he's been fine. I think they're so happy with him, and they've been so giddy with what they've seen so far that they don't want to jinx it right now. But I think, and I'm not saying anything that's never been said before, but when you're fast at inside linebacker, you have a fast defense, and they are fast at inside linebacker now, and they're super fast with Arvell Reese. Edmonds can go sideline to sideline, but Edmonds is, Arvell Reese is a different animal altogether. The guy is just a gazelle, and he's mean and he hits. And Bob Papa was talking about him making plays in the OTAs and coverage. He said he made this really good play in the red zone where he dropped back and broke up a pass. I think Reese is going to be like a game changer on this defense, and nobody's talking about it yet. And so if people want to know why I'm really excited about this team, it's because of Harbaugh, it's because of Dart, but this linebacking group is just so good. And again, they blew up the inside linebacker room. They're all gone. Micah McFadden, remember, was on IR last year, but everybody else is basically gone. And they've completely replaced it. And because the other guy that they drafted that looks like he might make the team is Jack Kelly. So they got him. Now, they did bring back Muasau and Zaire Barnes, but they're going to have an uphill fight to make the team. Even Harbaugh is talking about Kelly now. So I think Kelly's probably going to, replace Muasau is my guess. But this linebacking group is just amazing. And like you said, they can interchange them. They Abdul Carter could play inside, and they can move Arvell Reese outside, and the offensive line will be like, what the hell is going on? And then quarterbacks are not going to be able to easily throw over Edmonds and Reese when they throw to their tight ends. There's that's going to be a problem for quarterbacks, especially short quarterbacks. They're going to have a hard time with that.
The two things, the first one being Micah McFadden. The one thing about him is by not playing or starting, which at this point it looks like he wouldn't be, he can become a much more special teams focused demon. And I think Micah McFadden could be very good on special teams a lot. When you're starting a lot, it gets to be a little bit harder. When you're playing a lot and then you're playing specials, if you're playing both, you get worn down. So not starting can allow him to flourish, hopefully, on special teams. I think he can be really good there. The other thing is kind of funny that when you talked about some of these guys, Arvell Reese is the one guy that is big on paper that looks bigger in person.
Oh my God!
Than the big on paper.
He stands next to Maui Noah, and it's like, oh my God, he's almost as big as Maui Noah.
Yeah, you see what is written down as you're like, oh, he's a big linebacker. Then you see him, and you're like, holy shit, he's bigger than
he's really big. I think he can get bigger without losing speed.
So we'll see this group, and again, injuries change a lot of stuff, but I think this group could be scary good. And the numbers, what they juggle and carry, it's going to be important here. This is one of the ones where they have a lot of players. The depth behind those guys is a little thin, but it's actually not as thin when you think that, again, Carter can play inside, Reese can play inside, outside. So they have flexibility.
If Thibodeau leaves next year, which most people think, they'll have to draft another outside linebacker for a backup, but that's for next year. But they'll need to. And there are some guys that have a legitimate chance. Real quick, this Khalid Kareem, who they got late, I keep seeing his name popping up in the practices, and then Caleb Murphy's on the team. There is a spot for one of those guys. If Chauncey Golston is going to be on the DL defensive line, there is a spot for, again, and those are not names most Giants fans know. There is a spot for one of those guys to make the team. Now, defensive backs. I'm going to start off with, to me, probably the area that we haven't talked enough about that I'm going to be a little more negative on, and it's more based on last year, and the coaching can completely change this around, but I'm a little bit still nervous about safety. And it's the safety position. It's because Tyler Nubin hasn't lived up to his draft expectations, and Javon Holland has not lived up to his free agent expectation. And I'm hoping coaching is going to have a role in that. John Schmelk has said good things about the safeties in the spring, but that's the one area. Now they brought in Jason Pinnock is back with the team. They brought in Darius Washington from the Ravens, who I wouldn't discount. If Nubin or Holland, they better not automatically assume they have jobs, is all I'm saying with Washington on the team. But this is the one position, John, that we know how much Harbaugh values safeties. I am surprised they didn't get a safety in the draft. And this is the one spot where I'm a little bit nervous about that. I hope it works out because obviously Nubin's got to turn it around. To me, this is a big year for him.
I would say if he doesn't, he's never going to. This. I mean, it's set up in such a way that, again, those linebackers are really going to help take some of the pressure off. Where the Giants were playing safeties and bringing them up, and they were having to do a lot of the coverage with the tight ends and stuff. Our linebackers can carry those tight ends down the field a little ways. That they have the athletic ability. Again, it's got to be proven in the field, but athletically, they have the ability to do that. Where the Giants before, McFadden's not carrying tight ends down the field. He's not much in coverage. And if you look towards the end, I mean, Okereke's back really made him a one-dimensional linebacker. They have the ability there. So the safeties maybe have a little less pressure on them to do some of that stuff and a little more free roaming, coming up and playing a run, playing some of the deep pass. But you're right. Bringing Pinnock back I was shocked when Pinnock came back. You look at
Pinnock could beat out Nubin, don't you think? He could beat out Nubin.
He could. I mean, Nubin has done nothing to guarantee anything so far.
Well, part of the problem with Nubin, it wasn't just coverage. He was taking the wrong angles on stuff. Remember, there were running plays where it's like the running back broke off like a 40-yard run because Nubin didn't take the right angle on the guy.
And for a guy who was a playmaker on the ball in college, that was one of his callings. Was he was around the ball?
Senior, yep.
He's never around the ball. No. So that's been a real problem. Holland, on the other hand, is in a very if you ever really wanted a true indictment of a Joe Shane philosophy that kind of came back to bite him, it's the safety position. His comments about Barkley were not wrong. They were right. It just bit him in the ass because of how it played out. On the other hand, his comments about McKinney and then turning around and spending a ton of money on Holland made him look stupid. And then Holland, who has had injury issues, had one really good year and then has kind of come down, does not have a lot of, if you look over time, he doesn't have a lot of interceptions, doesn't have a lot of ball playing skills that have shown up in games. That's been a real indictment. That was a real swing and a miss, and Holland needs to show something this year.
And I sort of understood, and I've said it, why they let Julian Love go, but Julian Love's got a Super Bowl ring now too. So I mean, so it hasn't looked. You're right, Johnny. He's kind of, because the Saquon thing and the Daniel Jones thing stole the oxygen, or took the oxygen out of the room. People haven't focused on how they botched the safety position. So again, I know I'm sounding overly negative here, and I'm hopeful the coaching is going to make a difference here, because I do think Nubin's going to be put in a better position, but it's the one area along with the defensive line that makes me a little bit nervous right now. And it's just because the way these guys have performed in the past. I'm a little bit nervous about it. Now, on the other side, the corners, I'm a little bit more optimistic about this now. Now, real quickly, Bob Papa did say how great Paulson Adebo has looked this spring. And that seems to be what Schmelk has been saying too. So it looks like, so the big thing here is there's a big scheme change here, and everyone's admitting it now. So this is where the Shane Bowen system really was. There's been it's a bit more again. It doesn't mean they're not playing zone, but it's a zone system at time. It's a zone system that uses aggressive man principles within the zone, and they'll use man. So this is much more similar to what Wink was doing, because Wink was with Harbaugh in Baltimore. Right. So this is more what Deonte Banks is comfortable with. This is what more Paulson Adebo is comfortable. Definitely Colton Hood. Colton Hood was a press man corner in Tennessee. So the system is much more conducive to the defensive backs that they have, and Newsome too. Newsome, when he was in Cleveland before he went to the Texans, it was again the same thing. So they're having the corners do the things that they're most comfortable with. This is going to be a very aggressive system where the corners are going to love it because they're going to be able, and that includes Deonte Banks. And the one thing about Deonte Banks, real quick, which the first time I had heard this, is Carl Banks said it wasn't drugs, and he said it wasn't criminal, but there was some off the field shit going on with Deonte Banks last year that was affecting his game. I was like, whoa, what are you talking about? And they didn't want to get into it, but and he said he wasn't going to talk about it. But and then again, I'm not trying to say Deonte's going to be fine now, but there was something else going on with Deonte. And Deonte now, again, the earlier returns has been with Schmelk and Tino is the thing. He looks better. They still think he's not the top 2 or 3 corners on his team, but they're saying he's practicing way better than he did last year at this time. He looks like a different player, they're saying. Again, I'm not trying to start a whole Banks thing with you. I'm just saying Banks is still in the picture. So.
That's fair. Yeah. I don't want to debate any of that stuff because a lot of it.
Well, we don't. It matters what they do in the real games.
Yeah, because some of it predates last season.
Yes,
there was the season before. So let's see. But I'll leave that out of it for a second. I've always wanted to ask this question, and I wish we could. I would like to ask the media folks the question. I'd like to ask the Giants staff when they make these comments. What does it mean when you say they've looked good this spring? When you're just doing glorified, just kind of running around in shorts, and you're not playing anybody in particular. And I'm not making fun of it. I'm legitimately saying.
I'll give you a point. They were talking about in the podcast. They were saying that Banks was tight, had tight coverage in a play, turned around, and he intercepted the ball.
No, so, that's good. And I should have caveated. Yeah. I didn't actually mean for Banks in particular. I was thinking when they were talking about Paulson Adebo's look. Paulson Adebo's look so much better. Yeah. Well, what did they look like last year? What was so bad when they were doing their shorts and whatever?
Just elaborate again. I'm not trying to defend it, but what I think when Bob Papa said that he knew the reaction was going to be what you said. What he said was this: he said I was trying to remember last year at this time. My impression of Paulson Adebo, and he said, I can't remember him making any kind of impression on me. And he's saying now he seems to be catching his eye more. So again, like I said earlier in the podcast, spring, no one remembers anything that happens in the spring. I challenge anybody to ever remember what happened like in the spring of 2023, 2024, 2025. You don't even remember this shit. So this stuff, like you, John, it might not mean anything. I'm just saying the early impressions is some of these guys look different. So it looks like Deonte Banks is more focused. That doesn't mean he's going to make the team. It doesn't mean he's turned around. He just doesn't look like his head's up his ass. Let's put it that way.
2023, I believe Kadarius Toney was still trying to find shoes even in his second offseason, and he was having foot problems.
Banks's best year though was under Wink.
Yeah, his rookie year.
It wasn't great, but it was the year where we thought, hey, he had a decent year. If he can build upon this, we got a good football player. So, and then the next year, it was like, holy shit, Deontay Banks sucks. So again, now he's kind of going back to the old system. I'm just saying,
and the
I'm not saying he's turning around. I'm just saying, don't write him off, right?
And Paulson Adebo, to give credit, was still recovering, coming back from that injury he had with the Saints.
Right.
So he, even though sometimes you classify broken leg versus torn ligament as a much different, that's a different recovery. It just needs to be strong and then he's good to go. And ligaments take time because it's flexibility. Injury is injury. And sometimes guys just aren't the same until a full year later after some injuries. So maybe Adebo is better. We'll see. So
Colton Hood too. I just want to throw Colton Hood out.
Let's throw him in there.
Colton Hood, reading between the lines, Colton Hood is impressing them. So they keep mentioning when they're asked about players, the coaches keeps bringing up Colton Hood as a starter. So it's come up a few times where the reporters will say, well, they'll talk about Newsome and Deontay Banks, and they keep saying Colton Hood is definitely in play to be and that's pretty high praise for a rookie. And Colton Hood also has been making plays like pick six play. I think he has 2 pick six plays this spring. So far, so good. Colton Hood looks like the real deal for them. So he actually may end up being a starter on this team too. So I wouldn't be shocked if Colton Hood and Adebo are the outright starters.
I agree. So let's real quick then, because we need to tighten this up now. Special teams, real quick. We had some major changes in the kicking game. So it is looking likely, unless we go another veteran in camp, like they find somebody else. We could easily have a rookie kicker out of Michigan be the guy.
And a rookie long snapper. Long snapper.
And we have a new punter, which a free agent veteran punter. So
he's been kicking ass. Apparently the people that have been at practice say the punter is the real deal. So they're like, I think Patty Train is the one who said that. It might have been her, but apparently he's got. So I don't have any worries about the punter. But yeah, it's going to be a little nerve wracking this year with the new kicker. I think it's going to be Zavada, right? It's got to
be, right? I mean, it has to.
Sauls has sucked in his last week of practice. He was like 50. He was missing half his field goals. And I don't think you can write him off completely, but he's got to turn that around pretty quickly because Sauls was not looking good. Zavada's basically been nailing everything. I throw this out, John. I watched the interview with all these guys, Sauls, Zavada, Mann, who's the long snapper, and Stout, the kicker. Zavada and Mann look so goddamn young. I feel as old as I've ever done. But those guys look like babies to me. They look younger to me than when Eli was drafted. I remember when Eli was drafted, I'm like, oh my God, the guy's a baby. But you go back, if you guys haven't watched the Schmelk interview with Zavada in particular, the guy looks like he's in middle school. He just looks like this. I'm like, oh my God. He's young.
We'll know how comfortable they feel or don't feel like the within a couple of weeks. If you see the Giants bring in another veteran to add to the group, you'll know that they're not, because there's no need to at this point. If you feel like, hey, one of these two guys is our guy, we're going to let them fight it out. If you're worried that neither one of them can be that guy, very early on, you're going to bring somebody in, because you're not going to wait till the last week and then be like, oh, let's go find a veteran kicker, because too many things based on timing and everything else. If you're uncomfortable early, they're going to go get somebody else to bring in throughout camp to push and go through.
But the early returns of Zavada are good. He apparently nailing all his kicks. Schmelk said in his interview with him, he says, man, you've got a leg. I don't think that was him just throwing out bouquets just intentionally. I think the kid's got a legit leg. And if he's nailing all his kicks, and they may just go with the rookie. And we all would love to have a rookie. Like Dallas seems to come up with these kickers that last a decade for them, that like hit 60-yard field goals against us. It'd be nice to return the favor, and have Zavada hit the 60-yarder against Dallas to win the game. So that's the hope. But it's always, you never know. anyone who's watched football for a long enough time knows when you go with a rookie kicker, it's a little nerve-wracking. But the long snapper is a big guy for a long snapper too, and apparently he's a heck of an athlete. So, but that's another thing. We Giants fans have a little bit more appreciation for long snappers if you were old enough to watch the playoff game against the 49ers. So we know how important long snapping is. So
indeed,
yes.
Indeed. Amazingly enough, as I brought up in that last video, that very long snapper who we had, who it was such a disaster, was actually in the game in 1986 playing for the Raiders as a tight end for the Raiders. And here he is all those years later, 2002. He's suddenly the snapper for the Giants in a playoff game.
I think that was his last game too, wasn't it? I think that was.
I believe so. I believe so.
That's a unfortunate way to, like Bill Buckner. It's a fortunate way to end things.
Why did you have to bring that up?
Yeah. But on that note, my last comment on all of this is I really like this team. I'm as excited for football as I've been in a long, long time. I think there are holes and places to be nervous. Like I said, it's safety. Defensive line, there are question marks, but I think the offensive line is going to make the offense look pretty good. A lot of everything, not everything, but almost everything depends on Jaxson Dart. I think, it's a quarterback league. He's got it, but I like the coaching staff a great deal. We really lucked out getting Harbaugh wanting to come here, and I think this is a great coaching staff that they've put together. And I think this is going to be a competitive team, and I think we're going to be in the playoff hunt this year. I really do. I'm really excited about this team. We'll see. I know everybody else is saying Eagles, Cowboys again, but we'll see.
So we're gonna wrap it up. I'm trying to put it together. I'm hoping I can do it and I have to make sure that Eric's available. But we've been trying to keep Saturdays as our thing.
Yes.
I want to do a trivia one. Even if it's not a whole show of trivia, I would like to do a section where we just play some fun trivia and have that. We have some other stuff. I know there was some talk about wanting to see us do some previous seasons as well.
Well, remember we wanted to do another 86 one where we did viewer questions and stuff like that. So we just had people from in the chat section, not just questions, but just bring up memories and bring up things about the 86 season as a compliment to the one that we did on.
Yes. We want to do that. So there's, and quite frankly, we're rapidly running out of time.
Yes, we are.
Before the season starts.
2 weeks, we'll be doing training camp. John.
Training camp stuff.
2 weeks. Yeah. So
psych for that. So with that being said, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're doing well. We're doing pretty darn well. So I appreciate we're closing in on 2,100 subscribers. So that's pretty cool. We'll let you know what. Assume it's going to be next Saturday, but who knows? I mean, you never know what might happen between now and then. So we might do something else, but count on next Saturday. And with that, I'm going to say, everybody go enjoy your Sunday, and we'll catch you again real soon.
Hey BBI fans, elevate your style with the all-new Inside BBI merchandise. From super soft tees to cozy hoodies and mugs for your morning brew.